If you have any questions about writing for tenor saxophone, then you've come to the right place. I am a professional saxophone player and I know everything there is to know about writing for tenor saxophone. In this video, I'm going to show you how the transposition works, what the different ranges sound like, what the extreme ranges of the tenor saxophone sound like, and whether or not you should write for those ranges. And I'll also be showing you how the different ranges sound with different dynamics. After watching this video, you should be able to write a part that's playable for whatever tenor saxophone player you are writing for, and that comes out sounding the way you want. First, let's begin by looking at how the tenor saxophone transposes from concert key. The tenor saxophone is a B-flat instrument. In addition, it also sounds an octave lower. So if you want to notate a middle C on the tenor saxophone, it would look like this. Now, if you're working in most modern music notation softwares like Dorico, you will be able to just simply write this out in concert and have the parts transpose automatically. But it's good to know about these transposition things so that when you export your parts, you know they look right. For a transposed tenor saxophone part, you also want to always notate it in treble clef. With that out of the way, let's take a look at the range of the tenor saxophone. So let's start out by looking at the middle register of the saxophone. This is where you want to write if you're writing for a complete beginner. This range goes from F below middle C to F above middle C. This is a very easy range to play on the tenor saxophone, and even for a complete beginner, you can easily write in this range from very soft to very loud. Now here's what it sounds like. Now for a complete beginner, this range is easiest to play in the key of B-flat major. As you're adding more flats or more sharps to this key, it gets increasingly challenging. So now let's take a look at the lower register of the saxophone. The notes ranging from F and all the way down to A-flat, an octave and a third below middle C. Most saxophone players that aren't complete beginners will be able to play down to at least the C below middle C. Now from there and down to the low A-flat might be a bit challenging for some. On the saxophone, we have pinky keys in both hands. Now these are a bit hard to maneuver, especially for beginners. And it's also hard to go to the very low register because you need to do something with your oral cavity and your throat called voicing. Now stay away from this register if you're writing for a beginner. And even some intermediate players will have a challenge down there, especially at lower volumes. In order for these notes to come out, a lot of beginners will need to honk them out. Something that's definitely good to be aware of if you're writing in this register. Now for an intermediate saxophone player, you also have what's called subtone. This simply means playing these notes with a rounder sound and at a lower volume. And subtone sounds like this. If you want that subtone sound for the low notes you're writing for the saxophone, simply write subtone. Now let's take a look at the higher register of the saxophone. First, let's take a look at the register ranging from F above middle C and all the way up to B-flat above middle C. This is another register that most saxophone players will be able to play with relative ease, even beginners. However, for beginners, this is where the register starts to get a bit harsh, which might be good for you to know as an arranger or composer. Now as we get to the C, that's an octave above middle C, we get to the palm key fingerings. And these are a bit challenging for beginners. Palm key fingerings go up to concert E-flat, an octave and a minor third above middle C. Some beginners might be able to play up there, but beware, it might sound a bit harsh and out of tune. So now we've covered the entire normal range of the saxophone, meaning this is the range you would want to stay within for most of your saxophone writing. However, there are some ways to go both below and above these pitches. To go below the A-flat, an octave and a third below middle C, you'll have to use your leg. This is not a very practical way to play the saxophone, and it's used mostly as an effect. Now, when you go in the other direction, meaning above the E flat, that's an octave and a minor third above middle C, we get into what's called the Altissimo register. Just a side note, a lot of modern saxophones also have a high E key. But for vintage horns like mine, the high E is where the Altissimo range starts. Now, before you start writing in the Altissimo range for saxophone, you want to make sure that your saxophone player is somewhat of a professional. It takes a lot of work to get these notes to come out clean, and it takes even more work to make them sound nice. Not only is it challenging to voice these notes with your oral cavity and your tongue and your throat, but it's also quite technical to play up there. Because none of these pitches have regular fingerings on the saxophone, it's just a mix of pressing different keys that will make these pitches come out clean. Now, the Altissimo range goes on for quite a while, but when I play in a horn section and I write arrangements for myself, I'm usually comfortable writing up to about the G, that's an octave and a fifth above middle C. Beyond that, it can get a bit tricky, and I only write there in special circumstances. In regards to volume in the Altissimo range, it might be challenging to play it softer, but if you can't play it soft, then you're probably not comfortable enough in Altissimo anyway. So only write in the Altissimo range if you know who's going to be playing your arrangement and you know that they are somewhat of a professional. I hope this was a helpful video and that it'll make it a bit easier for you to write for saxophone in the future. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments, and for more saxophone and jazz content, make sure you're subscribed to my channel. See you in the next one.